Are we ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I'll just use that one.
Nailed it.
Hey, thanks for stopping in a Night Shift video. My name is James, and tonight I am joined by...
I'm Cody.
I always mess that up.
That's all right.
I know that your introduction line is I'm Cody.
Yep.
And every time I introduce you, I'm like, oh, I'm going to set it up to where it sounds natural.
Yep.
And then I don't.
It's fine. I'm not too worried about it. I just go with it. You notice I never change it.
No,
Like
you
I
don't.
could have said something more natural.
No, but I like it. It's
I'm Cody.
That's your name. If it's not taken on Instagram, you should really just change it to that.
First time, second. Yeah,
Yep.
I guess Cody. I will look into that.
I'm Cody.
I'm Cody.
You can follow him at I'm Cody if it's not taken yet.
I'm a look as soon as we're done.
Anyway, so we are talking about some decades tonight. So
Let's do it.
for those that don't know, in season 1, kind of when we first started the show, we went through and we did decade episodes.
Yeah.
And back then we put everything in one feed, one episode. So it was like episodes were like an hour and a half long.
Yep.
And we would like talk about something beforehand, and then we'd go watch a movie, and then we'd do the review of the movie afterwards. And we went through from basically the 2000s working backwards, and we made it back to the 40s.
I was going to say it was
Yep.
like 50s or 40s.
Yep.
It was
And
impressive.
there are earlier horror movies than that, but we didn't go back further than that. So we might have to hit some of those this year too.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things that like, I want to not just check them off the list. Like I want to watch these for my own benefit, but
Right.
also like it takes a very specific headspace to go into a silent film.
It's true.
Or into I don't even know. Yeah, I guess it's just music score, like no
Right.
dialogue or whatever. So, and sometimes we get there. Like I feel like I'm often the one in the group who's like, hey, I'm ready for a subtitle film. Hey, I'm
Right.
ready for a foreign film. Hey, I'm ready for, and it hasn't come up really yet. Actually, when I got the choice, I diverted away from.
It's true. You did.
I've been saying for a long time I want to watch the original Dracula, and we didn't. So that's all right.
Or Nosferatu.
Or Nosferatu.
You were
yeah.
really...
I really wanted to do
like,
Nosferatu.
I brought it up for some reason.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that's going to be my pick.
Yeah.
And then you had a pick
No,
and
I
you didn't
didn't
use
do
it.
And I should have done anything but what I chose. But anyway, I digress.
So we went through all that, and we didn't do a 2010s because it was currently 2019.
Yep.
And we wanted to say, hey, let's see what happens
Wanted to say hey.
before the end of the year.
Yep.
Because, there might be some things we're talking about in the last year of the 2010s.
I'm so glad we waited.
Oh, God, yeah.
I'm so glad we waited.
So I'll just go through, and first I'm going to point out some things that I have kind of picked up on for trends of the 2010s. And if there's anything that you picked up on, feel free to interrupt me at any time. So the first thing would be there's a lot more diversity in horror
yeah.
than probably ever before.
Yeah, and I feel like there was a time where it was like funny to end the trope, right? Like like we're going to set or to play into it. Like, oh, we have this thing where it's the African American who dies first, and like,
Right.
oh, we're gonna make him die second. See what we did there? It's like, yeah, okay, I get it, but like, okay, it's not really like the larger conversation we're still having issue with.
Right.
And yeah, I completely agree. Like it's something that we've seen kind of go by the wayside. Obviously, we've had a huge influx just in our culture of
Absolutely.
like girl kick butt movies, which is not a bad thing. But we've had a lot. I feel like there's always been like the final girl thing, but like now we have there's been a lot of, hey, there's a chance that she makes it, or there's a chance that her friends make it, or there's a chance that she turns the entire thing on its head and
Sure.
she becomes the like anti-hero. So
You're next.
yeah, there's
It's a movie that came out in the 2010s that we're
Yeah.
probably going to talk about.
Yeah.
Because we both liked that
We
one.
both liked it.
Another thing is just the continued rise of artsy. I put all these together even if they don't always belong together.
okay.
Artsy, smart, but also just meta horror movies. And
Okay.
sometimes it can be meta without being artsy or smart.
Yeah.
I.e. Tucker and Dale. But
Yes.
but I think that
that's so
there
good.
is a intelligence behind something like
Yeah.
Tucker and Dale that maybe was lacking in the 80s slasher movie.
Oh, for sure. for sure.
So we can see that continue to rise. And then two things that just have to be brought up is the Conjuring universe.
Yep, we're going to get there.
There have been 7 movies.
Oh, you counted. Good for you.
Including the tie-ins, there have been 7 Conjuring movies.
I just kept going through the list thinking, wow, this came out in this decade. Oh, this came out in this decade.
Yep.
Holy moly.
Yep.
Okay.
So, I mean, obviously it's there. So, I did want to say that we've seen this rise of artsy meta smart movies, but that does not mean that we're seeing a decline in
the bad, stupid movies.
Just not bad and stupid, just like lowest common denominator, jump scare-a-thon, like the things that, yes, most like, you know, Petersburg, horror aficionados like to shit on, but like still sell tickets and still sell DVDs and still sell Blu-rays.
Sorry. For those who are not watching, I just ran my beer into the
Honestly,
microphone.
I'm sure they heard that too.
And I tried to play it cool. Didn't happen. Anyway, no, you're right. It kind of felt like, you know, any given week we could be getting into a very strange portion of like a subclass of horror where like it could, and like a lot of times it seems like they brand themselves one way or the other, and then it's like, oh, we get into it. It's like, oh, this is all. We thought we were getting into the artsy, smart,
right,
and we went the other way. Like, I feel like a prime example, not to get ahead of ourselves here, is like Curse of La Llorona. It's like, and like I think we all had the idea of like, oh, this is gonna be bad early on, like even from the previews, but like it had that feel of. Like,
I had so much hope for it still, just like it was the Crazy Rich Asians of Latino horror. Like it was like this is a basically all Latino production, which has pretty much never been done in a major like horror movie before, and like I'm like, yeah, this is bitchin', but then like just because you do that doesn't necessarily mean the movie's great. Yeah,
well, and like I think part of my promise behind it, not that this is a commentary on just this movie, but like there is so much I don't like maybe you call it tradition or like not quite conspiracy, where like you have this melding of like religion and culture, and so and like I don't like mythos in
folklore
in Central and South America. Like there's so much, and I thought like surely they're going to address and maybe that is one, but God, it came off so bad.
La Llorona, like, and I mean I don't know, like I've always heard these stories of like the Bruja, and like I feel like in those stories they're always depicted as so terrifying, and like I feel like there's still a lot more to explore there.
Anyway,
another big trope and trend is just Stephen King is back,
and I feel like, you know what, I'll take the good with the bad.
Sure.
Like I know Pet Sematary wasn't great. I thought the first it was okay. I did not, I will be the first one to say I did not see the second. I wasn't interested enough in it. I think like by that point they are using King's work, and that like they have carte blanche, and like that that to me makes me very nervous. Like and like I know like this is the dude who comes from like, hey, I love Halloween. Like I get the irony behind that statement, but also like oh gosh, I always forget the name of it. But what's the show on Hulu?
Castle Rock.
Castle Rock. Yep. I always want to say Rockbridge, and I know it's wrong. Castle Rock. Castle Rock is so good,
so creative.
And then just the movie that you saw with Ewan McGregor,
Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep, which
comes out on Blu-ray, I think this week.
I was gonna say I saw a preview that it's coming out soon. I remember it February, so I'm very excited to see it.
Yep.
And I'll take it. Like I feel like we're at a place now where the imagery, if you've ever read any of King's stuff, I got into his shorts a lot in high school, like late high school, and like the imagery, it takes quite a bit to try to capture the imagery that he writes with, and I feel like we're at a time where we can do it well, and not need a huge budget for it. So
there have been 12 Stephen King adapted movies in the 2010s, and 9 TV specials or series.
Wow.
Including Castle Rock. Like,
so probably a lot of titles that I didn't even recognize.
There's a ton of stuff in there that I was like, I didn't even know.
That's really cool.
But yeah, I mean, 12 movies, 9 things for TV. Like, he's back.
And because I feel like, especially like you have to, You don't have to love King stuff. Like, I get like the big goofy. He always has some like
right.
We've jumped the shark moment, right?
Yeah.
Where like it's just and like I get that you don't have to love that portion, but you have to recognize
drove the jet ski over the cocaine shark.
Like it was like, dude, it was, but you have to recognize what he does for horror and the kind of the perimeter people, the fringe people that he'll get because of his namesake, right?
Yeah.
Like the readers, the like.
Well, yeah, I mean, at this point, like, I think the best comparison would be like Stephen King works are the Transformers of horror.
Yeah.
A lot of it started in like the 80s, and then, you know, we didn't hear about it a whole lot in the 90s and early 2000s, and like now it's back with a vengeance.
Boom.
Like,
It's back.
because it hits that middle point of like, you know, I didn't grow up with Stephen King writing his most famous works, but my dad read his most famous works, so they were in the house.
Yeah.
And like I would see the covers as a kid and be like scared and like intrigued the same way as whenever you saw these things, the VHS covers at the Blockbuster and stuff like that. And then like once you become of age is whenever you get to read it and all that stuff. And then like now it's at a point where like it still appeals to my dad. It still appeals to me.
Yep.
And, you know, within the next couple years, like, I'll be wanting to show that stuff to my kid.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. So we're going to go through year by year here and just talk about a few things that came out each year. Cody said he has way too much
I
prepared.
have way too much. And like some of this.
So maybe I'll just let him talk the rest of the time.
Hopefully, like some of this, I'm not going to get too deep into. If you don't mind, I want to start
I would love that.
because this was a big deal movie to me and my friends. The Crazies.
Yes.
It came out in 2010.
First one on my list, too.
And it's just if you were like maybe if you're younger than us, maybe you don't know the appeal. It's a good movie. Like I think you should watch it. Like
And it's a Romero remake.
and I think it ages well. It's it has some things that a lot of people walk away from saying like I'm really mad that they chose to do this, and I get that, but I think sometimes that's indicative of a good story, right? Like, and so I like without spoiling, like I think a lot of
Yeah,
people
you're
have probably seen this. But like the ending is, I'll never forget that sinking feeling at the end, and it was
That hopeless feeling.
and this was one of those movies that like I just said last week where like me and my dad went and saw White Noise and The Grudge and like we're like trying to churn through some of these pretty bad 2000s movies.
Yep.
And then the Crazies was one of the first where it was like
Diamond in the rough.
wow,
Absolutely.
this can be good. Like there can be new horror movies.
Yeah.
So that's the first on my list.
New remakes, but
Yeah, but but also like let's see what Rob Zombie's doing with remakes, right? I mean,
that's exactly like the headspace. And so if you need context, if you weren't like a horror movie viewer in kind of the mid 2000s going into the late 2000s, like that's where we were. It was this very heavily Rob Zombie influenced. After Devil's Rejects came out, I feel like a lot of things stole that aesthetic or were trying to cop that aesthetic.
Yeah.
I was just talking to Caleb from Horror Soup about the oh shit, what were they called? Hills Have Eyes.
Oh,
the
yeah.
2 Hills Have Eyes movies that came out.
it was like 7.
And like they just had the same just dirty, grungy, brown vibe.
Yeah.
And a lot of things were chasing after that.
Yep.
And one of the movies that I also wrote down for 2010 was I Spit on Your Grave.
Oh, yeah.
Which I felt also kind of chased that aesthetic. And that was a movie that I was into because I'm not big on revenge horror anyway, but it was a popular one that year, so I wrote it down.
Yeah, it's really big.
But yeah, what else you got for 2010?
So this is when we got Insidious, which I feel like is very like
It doesn't feel like that was that long ago, right?
really does. I was shocked when I saw
in my head that was like a 2014-15 movie.
Yeah. And again, another movie that like at 2010, like I feel like maybe I was just at that perfect ripe age of like wanting new good original stuff, right?
Yep.
Like especially when you come out of these Rob Zombie White Noise moments where like is it horror, and then you get in there, it's like, oh no, this is like actually just like suspense, which I'm not against, but when you're in there to be scared shitless, like that's not what you're looking for. And Insidious, another one. Actually, I did not see in theaters. I had just transferred to Anderson University. My roommate was from LA and did not really like horror movies. And he was like, "Wait, you haven't seen Insidious? This is like the only movie I watch. That could be labeled scary."
Right.
Okay, sure. I'll never forget. It was him, my roommate. Well, I guess technically Willis lived across the hall. Casey the Weenie. You've heard a lot about Casey the Weenie. Casey the Weenie was there, and it was great, man. We love it. We was like stayed up till like 4 a.m. watching a bunch of stuff, but like. This was on it. It's great.
Insidious was important for me. It brought me back. I'd pretty much kind of given up on horror movies. I got married in 2008. Nope, 2009. And hey, at least I was a year earlier. That's better than being a year later. Right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
In 2009, and my wife hated horror movies, so like very rarely was able to watch one. I went and saw Paranormal Activity in theaters, and that I think I've said it on here before, but that was the only movie that I've walked out of and asked for my money back. They said no, so I went back in and sat through the rest of it and just sulked the entire time. And after that, I just kind of given up. Like, my wife wouldn't watch them with me, so if I was going to watch it, it had to be like at night after she fell asleep or whatever. Like, I just didn't have the time or wanted to put in the effort to watch scary movies anymore. Yeah. And then Insidious came out, and I heard a lot of great stuff about it, so I went and rented it from Family Video in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Let's go.
I was living in Fort Wayne. I didn't know anybody, and went and I did that. I rented it, and I watched it after my wife went to bed, and I was like, oh my God. I do love scary movies.
This is really good. Shout out to Family Video, by the way. I don't think you're looking to sponsor anything, but dude, I would take it. You're 30 seconds from my house. It's great. I can still rent a movie for like 50 cents. 50-50 if it's
still
scratched,
free kids
but that's
movies.
Okay. Still free kids movies.
Crazy.
Half price, like staff picks.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway. I'm going to list two movies that I think were just god awful. I had hopes for one. I had limited expectations for the other. Limited expectations. Paranormal Activity 2 came out in 2010. I was told by the girl that I was dating at the time that it was totally different and it'll be fine. And it was the exact same movie. I was so mad. And that was the point. I know, shocking. Yours is the point. I watched the first one. I'll never watch another one. This was I will never watch another Paranormal Activity. It was awful. I was so mad. The other one I actually had a lot of hopes for was The Wolfman with Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, the 2010 Wolfman. That's a Universal monster movie.
It was bad.
Oh, really?
I did not like it.
I haven't seen it. I've heard that one was surprisingly good. A lot of people think that it was surprisingly good.
It was not
great, but it's like, oh, that's better than I thought it would be.
What I expected was more, probably more along the lines of like Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp, and it never really got there. The CGI wasn't great. It had like Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins. I was very excited for it, and I think probably just built it up too much in my head. And I saw it in theaters, and me and my buddy, we both all walked out. It's just like, oh, this is not great. Could have been better.
There it is.
And then my last one for 2010 is Tucker and Dale.
Tucker and Dale, yeah, that was my last one too. It has to at least be mentioned.
It's so good.
So good.
It's so good.
2011, the first couple things that I have is, first of all, Grave Encounters.
Grave Encounters.
Which is a shockingly good found footage movie. I just had an interview with Fear Scale. I don't know if you know who they are.
Nope.
They do this really cool thing where they're a social media account, and they also do like some blog posts and stuff, but they hook viewers up to a heart rate monitor. Oh. And they actually measure their heart rate as they're watching horror movies.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's almost like scientific evidence of whether or not a movie is scary.
They don't need a nuggy scale. They have the heart scale.
And so it's funny because, like, I won't get into it. We had a really great interview about what movies rank high versus what movies rank low, and it's super interesting. But he said that one of their highest ones that he can remember was Grave Encounters, and that found footage movies in general tend to rate much higher on their scale because it, for whatever reason, feels more real and you're more bought into it. And but yeah, Grave Encounters was one I didn't even probably watch it in 2011. I discovered it later on Netflix.
Yep, me too.
And it was one of those great Netflix movies.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to hit two that are kind of like I don't know. I lump them together.
Yep.
Scream 4.
Yep.
Which is a big deal.
Yep.
If you have not seen Scream 4, I know typically when you put a 4 after something, you're like, don't watch this. This is horrible. Scream 4 is great.
I'm just so mad that I didn't watch it in theaters.
Yeah. Like honestly, I think I was probably at that headspace where it was like, I don't have the time, I don't have the interest. Yep. But it is so good. So if you have not seen Scream 4, you have to. Also, Final Destination 5.
Yeah.
So again, another movie. So I was dating a girl at the time who liked horror movies.
Yep.
And so it was like, there's a reason I say we were dating and not that I'm still married to her, right? Like, it wasn't that great. But Final Destination 5, like, I feel like is important to mention just because it is it is something still clinging to our culture at this time, right? Mm-hmm. And even my high school kids now understand the Final Destination trope, which I think is really interesting. Not certainly defending this movie. It is not where I would put Scream 4. That's not why I said them together. But it's a kind of a callback to an older genre, like that 90s genre or very early 2000s.
Yep.
And it's still existing and it's still doing okay. Like it's still drawing that crowd.
Yep.
So
also 2011 we got some Ty West films. We got Innkeepers and You're Next, both in the same year.
Oh man, I was shocked when I found out that they were both 11.
Pretty crazy.
So good. Like, if you are a first-time listener, you probably don't realize like the bro crushes we have on Ty West.
We got a big old chub for Ty West, and I really want him to make another horror movie.
Right?
Ty West, make a horror movie.
Just do it,
please.
Man.
Do another one for me.
And it's not because we think you're stuck in this genre. It's just you're really good at it.
You're so good.
You're really good. And
so good. In my opinion, like, he could be up there with these names that we talk about in, especially 2010 modern horror of Ari Aster and Jordan Peele and Mike Flanagan and Robert Eggers. Like, Ty West, you could be there, but you haven't made anything, and you haven't made a horror movie in a long time.
A minute, yeah.
And I'd like a new one, please.
Yeah, we'll take it. Because for those who don't know, there was a time where me and another co-host, Danny, were completely unfamiliar with the name. James was like, hey, I was thinking about watching a Ty West movie this week. And we're like, okay. It's like, I don't know what that means, but sure, we're in. And he's like, oh, like I have to indoctrinate you.
Yeah.
And
it was the whole catalog.
It's still one of those times where it's like, I looked forward to. There are weeks where we say what we're going to watch and like we have to cross things off the list, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. This is one of those, like, every week I knew I had no idea what I was getting into, and I was so excited for it, and it never failed.
Yeah.
It always delivered in different ways. Like, his movies are very different. They deliver in very different ways.
I feel like we've talked about Your Next a lot. So, like, Your Next is a great, like, kind of The Strangers-esque home invasion, and it's really, really good. But The Innkeepers, I feel like maybe even gets slept on a little bit because like it looks like on the surface just this like really bad ghost story movie. It looks like it's really trying to be The Ring. Yeah. But like I think if you take a step back, you can realize that he was trying to capture the aesthetic of something like The Ring and do it in his own way, and it's still good.
Still really good. Still really good. So those are on my list, and then the last thing I had on my list was The Thing. Just something that I had really high hopes for.
And you watched the
I did.
You watched the new Thing?
I
did not watch the new Thing.
I had really high hopes.
I remember it coming out. I remember they even had a video game.
I have a lot on my list of where I had really high hopes. And it was just it was so bad. Like and again, this falls into that time period of when I was dating this girl, and like we would go and see horror movies, and it was so bad.
What'd you have for 12?
12. I only have 2 listed.
Okay.
This is when I tried to start thinning my list. The first is VHS, which I did not watch in 12. I think I watched with our crew somewhere around 16, 17.
Yeah.
Really good. I think I have VHS 2 somewhere on this list. I think it's 13. I did not like 2 as well. Yeah. I felt like they were trying to capture the edginess. Whereas I feel like VHS captured the
was
found
really,
footage,
really pure.
and it was the anthology was great. It was a new thing that we weren't trying to recreate something.
Yeah.
And then the other one was Woman in Black.
Okay.
I remember this being really hyped. I saw it in my hometown with a couple of my high school
Is
buddies.
that old
my
boy
dad,
Daniel Radcliffe?
Daniel Radcliffe. I remember being very I remember everybody kind of pulling me to the theater, including my dad. And like this, and like if you haven't pieced together, like we do movies together. And like we don't do it as much now. It was definitely a part of our relationship in high school and college. And so I remember people pulling me to the theater. I remember being really mad about it. And I remember the movie being pretty good. I think I've only watched it once since theater release. I think probably the last time I've seen it is probably 2015. I have no idea if it ages well.
Yeah.
But I remember in the theater it being a lot better than I remember. I refused to watch Women in Black 2 because I thought, how in the world could you even do that?
Yep.
But it was another...
How I feel about A Quiet Place too, but moving on.
Oh yes, let's not get there. but again, I'm like some of my list is just trying to attack like the culture of what was happening then, where we had some really really good recent, but like even in my opinion, like Wolfman, where like we're trying to capture this very creepy, almost Victorian age. It just wasn't being done very well.
Sure.
And Woman in Black was pretty good.
Cool.
So anyway.
12, I had Cabin in the Woods and Sinister.
Yeah.
13 is when we get The Conjuring.
Yep. Conjuring.
And
Here we go.
also the Evil Dead remake.
Yeah, which we watched together.
Yep. We didn't see it until like last year.
Yeah. Really good.
Yep.
Like I think we were all kind of floored at how good it was.
Yeah.
Just it captured what it needed to capture. It kind of zigged where it needed. It zagged where it needed to zag, zigged where it needed to zig. Enough throwbacks, but enough fresh ideas as well. Mm-hmm. And one that I was like, it was kind of on my list of like, I don't really want to see that because isn't this just a cash grab? But
yeah,
it's really good.
What did you have for 14?
So Annabelle.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about a lot. So I won't get too much into that. The Babadook, which was, I feel like a really big deal because, correct me if I'm wrong, like I think this was like starting a streaming phase, right?
Yeah.
Like was Babadook, it may have been released somewhere. I remember everybody.
Yeah, I mean that was a super indie Australian film. If it wasn't for streaming being a thing, I doubt it would have gotten a U.S. theater release.
Yep.
And I don't think it ever did, unless it was in like super limited art house theaters.
Right.
So like if it hadn't been for Netflix, like I mean it's not by any means a Netflix original or anything, but if it hadn't been for them and bringing it to a major audience, like we probably never would have seen it.
And that's I certainly wasn't saying it because like we know where modern streaming has gotten, but I feel like this is where we kind of entered that age of like, hey, this is now accessible to you, and now we have things like Shudder, which is like completely devoted to this. Mm-hmm. But I remember, I think it was because I was in Fort Wayne by this point. I think it was one of my buddies here saying, hey, you should watch this. It's on Netflix, and like what a commonplace statement to say now.
Yeah.
And even though Netflix had been around for several years by that point.
Yeah.
This is where we found it. This was the platform. Mm-hmm. And another great movie. Probably don't need to talk about it too much. One that I love, I'll name two. Both I absolutely love. Creep came out, and it is, Creep 2 is okay. Didn't make my list. Creep 1 is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then As Above, So Below.
I love that movie.
I love it because it captures, like, there's a few movies that capture fear outside of like slasher or situational horror.
That's true.
And As Above, So Below not only gets into the, I wouldn't call it like Lovecraftian, but it does have this bigger
some of that cosmic, like I get where you're going with that. And there's no tentacles, but like there's this thing of like this is way bigger than anything
than
that
our standard universe.
And you have that like kind of sanity thing that is a thread through Lovecraft stuff.
And God, the claustrophobia sets in, man. Like I'm like it's one that, like I wouldn't say I'm claustrophobic.
Right.
I'm a big guy. I don't love tight spaces. Mm-mm. But dude, that scene where they are stuck
and so early in the film.
Oh, and like still I rewatch it, and like a lot of that movie doesn't like it doesn't rewatch well.
Right.
I've tried but that scene rewatches the same every time.
Yeah. A couple of them that I had for that year were It Follows and Oculus, both good films. Oculus, I believe, also being a Mike Flanagan film, if I'm not mistaken. So 2015. What's interesting about this is I believe this is the year that we all started watching movies together.
Oh, interesting.
And I didn't think that it had been that long.
I know that we saw one of these. I know that we saw two of these.
We
movies
saw
together.
two of these movies together in theaters, so that had to be when Scary Movie Monday started. Maybe it started late 2014, but it definitely was running through 2015.
Yep.
So basically, everything I have on the list from here on out, we've seen together.
We've seen together,
which is crazy, right? Like
either that or somebody has missed, and it's like, oh, you have to see this.
Right.
Like, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's, I don't know. It's just, that was kind of a crazy thing to me because like when we did all the early stuff, it's like, oh, I watched this when I was in middle school or whatever. Like these are all movies we've seen together. It's just crazy. So 2015, first thing I have down is Crimson Peak.
Oh, me too.
Just because I distinctively remember that was our first Scary Movie Monday at the theater where we said, hey, it's a Monday. We watch movies together every Monday, and we're going to go to the theater for this one because it just came out. It's Del Toro, and it's going to be awesome. And it was a very pretty movie, but it was not a scary movie, and it was just awkward.
The funny thing about that movie is I distinctly remember thinking, like, oh, it could get scary here. There were so many moments where it's like sometimes you sit in those movies and you're like, nope, this doesn't have a chance. It will never get scary. We've missed all the opportunity. And this movie, it kept coming back like, oh, it could get scary here. And then it just never did. It's like, you didn't even tease me. Like, it wasn't even almost scary. Like, sometimes you get like almost scary scenes.
Yeah.
This was just like, oh no, he's in love. Oh,
Yep.
That's nice.
Okay. Next up, I had Final Girls, which I don't think we've seen together.
Yeah.
I watched that one on my own, but I did like it. Then we have The Invitation.
Yep. Invitation.
Great.
Very good movie.
Cult movie.
Yep.
Krampus.
Which we saw together.
We saw together.
Yep.
I still think that you should watch Krampus again. I think that it's not as bad as maybe you give it credit for. If you think of it as like a slightly more adult Gremlins, it's a good scary Christmas movie.
It's bad. I watched it once. I'll only ever watch it once.
All right.
It was bad.
That's
it was
fine.
bad. We saw it in theaters. I remember people walked out and say like, it was pretty good. And I remember thinking, what the hell did you
were mad
smoke
at that
before
movie.
we come into the theater? It was bad. It was bad.
What do you have? What do you got for that year?
So I got Lazarus Effect,
Okay.
which was pretty good.
Yep.
Kind of one of those sleeper films. Not necessarily.
Kind of another Netflix hit.
Yeah, and not like the overt horror. Like it kind of was a slow burn. It kind of had horror elements. I've heard people argue that it's not really a horror movie.
Sure.
That's fine. It's a pretty decent watch. And then also The Witch.
Yeah.
The Witch came out that year, and that was like this is where we have some of those like what Woman in Black tried to be, what Wolfman tried to be.
Right.
Like, which is happening.
Yep.
It's happening. It's so good. And it like turned the tide for a lot of those films.
Yeah.
Oh, and I would argue also, I can't believe I'm gonna defend this.
I can't wait to edit that video of the faces you just made.
I can't believe I'm about to defend this, but I feel like what started that conversation was like The Village. But I'll digress from there.
Sure.
The Witch has a lot of those elements in a good way.
Yep.
Obviously not everything. Like,
I see what you mean by that.
But like where some of these highly polished, even Sleepy Hollow has these like very highly polished colonial era. Like this is a little bit more of that grittiness, a little bit more of that. Hey, we're trying to realistically show you what it was like then and the extreme faith that existed. So anyway,
we got to keep moving here.
going.
2016, I have The Belko Experiment, Don't Breathe, Hush, Train to Busan.
Oh, Train to Busan. Yes, so good.
Yep.
Sorry.
And then I think there's one more that we probably both have on our list that I'll let you take.
Ooh, actually, I have two that I want to talk about. Raw came out that year.
Yeah, that one wasn't on my list.
And Raw it's different, man.
It's different.
It's different. And then probably the one that we were both going to talk about is The Void. Holy moly.
Yep.
What a great, just Lovecraft inspired. Again, this goes back. I know we've had a lot of people give us some shade, give us some hate on The Void.
Oh.
Where we saw it, how we saw it, the crowd that we saw it with, old Crunchy McCrunch behind me.
McCrunch.
Like, dude, all of it made.
Love this movie.
And dude, I think it, for me, maybe it's just because the first time I saw it, it ages so well.
Yeah.
Like, I just rewatched it maybe a couple months ago.
Yep.
So good.
Oh, we didn't watch that as a review. We should review that this year.
We should. Let's do it.
To kind of give like the reasons why we think it's good. Because I think I've gotten in a lot of Instagram fights about liking this movie, and maybe we just need to kind of go on record and say why it's good.
I'd be happy to.
2017, I went ahead and put Creep 2 because I actually think Creep 2 supersedes Creep, but you can't watch the second without the first. So like it's a total package deal.
Yeah. And what I do like about Creep 2 is it doesn't try to. It goes new places.
Definitely. I feel like it totally just ups the ante. Yep. And like it's one of those movies that I walked into saying, how could they possibly make a second one, i.e. how I'm feeling about Quiet Place 2. I said, oh, we're going to make a second one by doing the exact same thing, but also doing it completely different.
Yep.
Next for that year, I have Gerald's Game.
Oh, so good.
The Ritual.
Yep.
And then probably the biggest movie of the 2010s, Get Out.
Oh, so I have one more.
Yeah.
So, because we've talked about those movies quite a bit.
Sure.
Mother came out that year.
Oh, that's right. It did. You're right.
Dude, Mother wrecked me. It is one that I still think too much about. It messes with me.
Yeah.
And I think we've made it pretty clear. Like, we are dudes who have backgrounds in faith. Mm-hmm. And, like, dude, the imagery and, like, it just changes things, man.
Well, dude, and like, I think you even more than me, I think I try to share a little bit of this, but you definitely have this kind of like a little bit like Mother Earth hippie vibe. Yeah. You will chastise me for not putting my beer can in the recycling bin. And so like that is kind of part of who you are too.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of part of that movie.
Oh my.
Yeah.
And it's just I feel like the reason why I like Mother is probably why people love Midsommar. Like something in them drives them to that outer aspect of horror. And I get that. But it came out that year, and for me personally, I had to put it on my list because it wrecked. But yes.
That's another great example though of this art
yes.
You know,
absolutely.
Meta and was smart with the three adjectives that I use is another example of that. And so we had that with Mother, we had that with Get Out. And then also that year, I think I already said it, we had The Ritual. But you know what else we had? 2017 brought us 3 remakes/reboots of extremely famous properties. And so that's what I mean by like, just because the artsy stuff is starting doesn't mean that like the lowest common denominator stuff has gone away. And that year alone, we got Leatherface, Jigsaw, and the new It movie.
Wow.
I had no idea all 3 of those came out the same year.
The same year.
That's kind of crazy.
That's wild.
Moving on, 2018.
Here we go.
I mean, I guess I'll save that one for last. I'm going to say Hereditary, which is great.
Great.
Overlord, which was pretty good.
Okay.
Possum, which was interesting as hell.
It was something. It was something.
And do you have anything else before the big daddy of the year?
Yeah, I think I have 2 shit movies. Bird Box and Slender Man.
I didn't even want to talk about Bird Box.
God, Bird Box and Slender Man.
Our first ever reviewed film.
Because that was the sensation. Like we've hit Netflix original. Bird Box was shit. Slender Man, I was so excited because there's so much real creepypasta out there.
So good.
And it was bad. It was awful.
Didn't even watch it.
Hit us with the big reveal.
Halloween 2018.
Let's go.
It happened. It's a thing. Whether you liked it or not, whether you liked it or not, it's good that movie was made.
Yep.
Like that's I guess that's the only thing I need to say about it.
Yep, that's it.
So moving on, 2019. I guess this is kind of already spoiled since we did a 2019 best of list.
Yep, we did.
But we've also seen a couple movies that we didn't see before. Yep. So I have Brightburn. I have Dr. Sleep. And then the next 2 we've seen together, so they're probably on your list.
Maybe. I have Haunt.
Yes.
And then maybe the next 2. This is always a gamble because we never rehearse this. I put on Lighthouse.
Me too.
I really liked Lighthouse.
If you didn't listen to the review, because I did that one with Alex, Lighthouse moved up to probably, I couldn't pick a spot in the moment.
Sure.
I said it's either 2 or 3. Us is still 1 for the year.
Yep.
But Lighthouse is either 2 or 3, which puts it up there. Like, it's basically Us, Lighthouse, Midsummer.
Yep.
Maybe Midsummer is above Lighthouse. I'm not sure, but probably not. Which bumped Brightburn off of my top 5 list.
Sure. And then Us. Like, Us has to be.
Yep.
Like, what a great way to cap this segment is. It's still one that I still think about just randomly. Like, I'd be driving, like, boom, it'll hit. It's weird.
Yep.
And
I've been binging Billy on the Street.
Okay.
On Netflix, which is Billy Eichner's On the Street TV game show where he just interviews random people on the streets of New York City. But occasionally he'll have celebrities on too. And he had a very younger Lupita Nyong'o from whenever she won her award for 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah.
And just like seeing her in like that setting, like triggered something.
yeah. Yep.
Like it was like probably 4 or 5 years before she would play Red, but it still like triggered something just seeing her face.
Yep.
And not even in a like spooky setting whatsoever.
Yep.
But
It's weird. It's weird, man. Like if we want to go down that road, like I found her very attractive before that movie. I do not find her attractive.
Well,
in
now
the
you just
least.
gotta watch her in Little Monsters.
Yeah,
it'll fix it. It'll fix it. I promise.
Okay. Because
Little Monsters,
terrifying.
she's not necessarily played up as like a sex symbol by any means, but like she's definitely like there is a male protagonist who like has a crush on her, but like she's just like the most adorable, wholesome kindergarten teacher.
Okay. So, it's my type, I guess. I'm married to a first grade teacher, by the way. Yeah, if you were unaware.
And she like carries her like ukulele around to like sing songs to kids, and then the zombie apocalypse happens, and so she's trying to make the kids not freak out and not know that zombies even exist.
Naturally.
And she's like murdering zombies, coming out like covered in blood and being like, "Oh no, it's okay. It's just finger painting time."
Yay! So there you go. Gotta see that.
So Little Monsters also came out in 2019. Worth mentioning, but you know we didn't watch that one together. So, anything else about the 2010s? How do you feel about it?
Good decade.
It's a great decade.
Great decade.
Maybe it was off to a slow start, but if it took some of that start to get us to the end, totally worth it. Because even though maybe it felt like a slow start, we still got Scream 4 in 2011. We still got Innkeepers, Your Next, Grave Encounters, like a lot of things that maybe we didn't even discover until later. Had we been as plugged into the horror community as we are right now, we probably would have watched them in the moment. But, you know, it is what it is.
Yep.
And I am very happy with the 2010s.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like more bright spots than dark spots.
Yeah. Yeah. And I should have listened to our 2000s episode to kind of remember kind of what our conversation was about, but I know for a fact it was not as positive as this.
Oh, for sure.
Like there are so many movies on this list that I could say these are must-sees, maybe must-owns.
Yep.
And then there's very few of those in the entire 2000s.
Completely agree.
Yeah. All right, well, that about does it for us for Night Shift Video. I am James, and we got...
I'm Cody.
Did it wrong again?
Sorry.
Thanks for stopping in.